So today we're gonna make bath bombs at home, and this is so simple that even a toddler can make them. It's a little bit tricky to find the ingredients in a grocery store. The place that I was able to find them is in a bulk food store, and they are so sure that people are gonna be making bath bombs for the holiday season that they actually even had them all pre-packaged. So if you can't find the ingredients in a grocery store, just look for them in a bulk food store or something like that if you have it. Okay, so the ingredients that it takes, this is super heavy, to make a bath bomb is baking soda. This one's super simple, you'll be able to find this anywhere. And you need epsom salts. And then the one that is tricky, the one that makes it so you have to look for it in maybe a little bit more of a specialty place, is you also need citric acid. And then beyond that, that's just the basic recipe. Yeah, you'll need molds to be able to form your bath bombs. And you're gonna need food coloring if you want them to be anything other than white. And you need a scent, so you need an essential oil, and you need water in a spray bottle, and this is a really important item. If you just try to pour water into it, it's not gonna work out, and it's gonna make it so that it's going to react, and then they won't work as well when they're in the bath. So you want a spray bottle that's gonna be able to make a really fine mist. And then some sort of oil is really nice. One thing that I have found is that if you're making the bath bombs for the little ones, the oil makes the bathtub a little bit slippery, so you might not want to put the oil into bath bombs that are going to be used for children. Makes it a little bit more bath safe. You might want to only use this for adults because then it makes it nice and moisturizing. And then for mixing all the ingredients together, what you want to have is a bowl and some sort of measuring cup. The recipe doesn't have to be exact measurements, so you can use any size cup you want. The bigger the cup, the bigger the recipe is going to be. So if you're making lots, use a bigger cup. If you're making only a little bit, only a little bit. I found for stirring it, a whisk or something that's opened up a little bit, or even a fork. So we need a mixer to get all the pieces mixed together, and then we're going to use a spoon for scooping it into the molds. Oh, and one other thing that's important is it's a really good idea to use gloves for this. I've done it without gloves because you have to actually kind of get your hands in there and mix it up with your hands. And if you don't use a glove, the ingredients, like when they're dry on your hands, they can pull a lot of moisture out of your hands. So I get really dry skin this time of year, so I want the glove to save my hands a little bit.
I want to it too.
No, you don't get to mix with your hands. You get to help me mix with the spoon. Okay, so we're making a big batch, so we are using a 1 cup. Sam's sleeping right now, but one of his favorite things about bath time is getting bath bombs.
Yeah.
And he's not quite talking yet, but he's getting very close to bath bomb being his first word, which is slightly amusing that he loves bath bombs more than mama or dada. Okay, so the recipe is 2 parts baking soda. We bought the biggest size bag, so these are a little heavy. 1 part Epsom salts. 1 part citric acid. The citric acid is basically what makes these do the fizzing that happens when you throw the bath bombs in. It basically is making one of those like baking soda volcanoes. The citric acid, when it mixes with the water, turns into like what a vinegar would be. So the baking soda starts to fizz up when they react. And that's why it's so important that you use the mist, because if you just dumped a bunch of water in here, it's just going to react as if you're throwing it into the bathtub. One thing I found too is when you add in the citric acid, it can make the baking soda clump a little bit, so you do have to work at it. You want to make sure that it gets mixed really well, because if it doesn't get mixed really well when it's still dry, it's not going to create an even reaction when you have the final bath bombs. Yeah, you can put it in there. Here, I'll just show you what it's looking like. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't really look like anything. It's just white powder at this point, but you can kind of see the crystals. It's okay. It's okay.
Don't spill it.
I won't spill it. Don't worry. You can kind of see the crystals of the Epsom salts in there. When you're looking at it yourself. It probably isn't going to show up on camera though. Alright, so the first thing I like to mix in is the oil, and the amount of oil that you use is just kind of dependent on how much oil you want into the bath. You know, like the amount that you're pouring in here is going to be divided between every single bath bomb that you make, so even if you put what feels like a lot in there, it's, you know, it's not going to be like you're pouring a cup of oil into your bath. So, you know, like I probably put 1/4 of a cup in there, eyeballing wise. I don't know. You can see that. Enough to kind of swirl some all over the top. And I'm also going to add in my essential oil. When I picked the oil, this is rosewood. When I picked this one, I did it so that it's something that's safe for children, safe for pregnant women, and like sensitive skin, something that you can use this essential oil for pretty much anyone, and you don't have to worry about if it's going to be safe for them. So that was my thinking when I chose this one, but you can choose whatever scent you personally like. Okay, and I'm just going to shake a bunch in there. Same thing as the other oil, you know, like what would be way too much for one bath is going to be fine when it's divided across all of these bath bombs.
Peep bubble, peep bubble, peep bubble.
Now these food colorings are a water, so they're gonna start reacting when you drop it in. So you do kind of want to space them out, and then you want to kind of mix it in fairly quickly. When you use just a little bit, it'll give a color to the bath bomb, but it won't necessarily color the bath. But if you use a lot of the coloring, you can actually get it to change the color of the bath. So when I made some for the kids, I used a lot of color, and then they get blue baths, which makes it extra exciting, right, Leah?
Yeah.
So I mix this all in, and it kind of want to do like what you do with a pastry, which is I guess why the whisk works well, because same idea as like a pastry blender would probably work well. You want to kind of mix all those oils in evenly so it gets a little bit crumbly. So this is now mixed in, and it's kind of, at this point it's kind of crumbly, and you can kind of like grab it and it'll form into somewhat of a shape, and that's just from the oils. The goal is to get it so if you squeeze it, it's actually going to hold on. That is when you start adding the water, and like I said, the water reacts with the mixture, so you want to slowly add this. So you want to just put in like a couple mists, like 3 or 4 mists of water. Sorry. And then like mix it in with your hands. And you want to just slowly add in the water, completely mixing it in every single time you add a couple more sprays, so that you can make sure you don't put too much of the liquid in, just enough that it's gonna have, well, first we have to get the water in. Yeah, just enough that it's gonna have that texture to it that'll hold it together, and then when you put it into the mold, basically you're then drying that little bit of moisture out and then allowing it to hold its shape. But yeah, like I said, gotta be careful. This is the part where you definitely don't want a toddler doing it, because a toddler will just dump a bucket of water in there. Right, Leah? Because you're impatient. Yeah, basically you know if you're like putting the water in too quickly, if it fizzes really loudly. You want to put it in with a fine enough mist that it's not going to totally fizz up. But I found that when I am kind of finish these and put them into the mold, there obviously is a little bit of a reaction going on, because they'll start out level, but as they dry they kind of bulge up a little bit, just from them kind of slowly, lightly fizzing from the water that's in there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's already starting to kind of hold together. So that there was 8 mists. And I think I'm gonna add just a couple more.
Not too many.
Not too many. Okay, another 3 in there. And that time it was fuzzing a little bit. Yeah. I just want to make sure that it's a little bit wetter maybe than what I do if I was the one molding it, just because Leah's going to be helping me on that part. That's the one thing about toddlers, right? They're impatient. You want to just get to the fun part. You don't want to do the work.
No.
Yeah, like now when I squeeze it hard and hold it up, oh, it's holding together pretty good. So I think we're pretty much to the point. I have these molds because we're gonna try making soap. So we bought some fancy soap molds. So these are kind of, they got some decorative details to them, and they're made out of like a flexible silicone. So it's gonna be really easy to pop out the bath bombs after they dry. So this is gonna be exciting to use. But last year we didn't have anything, and I'll show you what we used for those. Okay, so last year we made bath bombs and we just kind of used what we had around the house.
Yeah,
and so these are just leftover chocolate packaging, and they kind of had a little bit of a decorative detail on the bottom, and they're like a flexible plastic too, so they worked really good. And here, let's show them. And they kind of have like a nice detail on them when they're finished. And so these worked out really well just from something that was garbage. Another thing that we used is just a mini muffin tin. And then these, you know, the shape of them works pretty nicely. Like they're, like I said, I give them, what? Yes. Like I said, I use them for the kids. So I like the smaller size because then they can each get a bath bomb so they don't have to share. And then you can kind of decide how much bath bomb you want per bath rather than when you just have them in the oversized. Yeah, so you can use whatever you have at home. You don't actually have to have a special mold.
Let's do it.
Okay, fine. Oh wait, which color?
I want pink.
You want to do the pink one?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just got to super carefully fill up the mold. And you can start with it just lightly packed. But you do want to kind of pack it in there. The harder it's packed, the better they're going to stay together when they're finished. Need a little bit more than what fills it to start with. So you want to give it a bit of time to be able to make an entire set of gifts, because these need a day or two to dry in a mold like this. So I got my mold all filled and I got it packed in there. And then at this point you want to just set it aside to dry. Like I said, it's going to take a day or two before it's dry enough that you can pop them out of the molds. And then after that, you want to let them dry a couple more days again. So if you are making these for Christmas gifts, you want to make sure that you give yourself a couple weeks to get them ready before when you're going to be gifting them. Yeah, as it sits, it starts to kind of turn a little bit cemented, like on the bottom of the bowl, and it gets harder to work with. Yeah, they're really simple to make. I know, like, it takes a little bit of time to do it, like to pack them into the mold. And part of it is that these are super soft and flexible. I really like doing them in the muffin tin because it was so hard that I could actually just dump almost an entire like batch onto it and then just kind of spread it in and pack it nicely. And like the glove was a good trick, but before I started using the gloves, I was using like a spatula, and then I could use the back of the spatula to press everything in and then just get the leftovers and kind of shave them off back into the bowl to put them into another mold. So yeah, I mean, last year we made a ton of these and I was giving them out for gifts, and you know, I got it down to when the kids went to bed, I could do like a huge batch, filling up like lots and lots of molds in, you know, like an hour, including cleanup after. You did a really good job, Leah. Look how good Leah's looks. Looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, good work. When you make them like this, because there's so much essential oils in it, because it's going to be divided across, you know, like 4 or 5 dozen different bath bombs here, it can get really strong when you're working with it. So if you're sensitive to scents and stuff like that, it can get a little bit overwhelming. You might want to make one that isn't quite as scented. Another scent of bath bomb that I made that was nice because it wasn't really super scented like this when you first make it was I did green tea and powdered milk. So when I mixed it all in, it was just when I mixed it all in, it was just dried green tea and a dried milk powder. So it wasn't until you actually threw it into the bath that all that scent of the tea came out. And it was really nice and, you know, like a little bit more mature than these crazy colored, you know, super scented ones that are fun for the kids. Yeah, another thing is, so the end here is getting kind of dry. They can start to dry out as you're working with it. So if you're going to be working with it for a while with kids, you maybe want to start or stop halfway through and just mist it again and re-moisten it. I've lost my assistance, but as you can see, it's a super simple craft and it makes a super fun gift. So I highly recommend trying to make these. I know I talked at the beginning that it can be a little bit fussy to find the citric acid, but once you do find it, there is actually a bunch of uses that you can do to it. A lot of homemade cleaning items are made out of it, so it's good to have on hand, even though it seems like a little bit of a weird random thing when you buy it the first time. So we're super excited to wait a couple days, let these dry up, and then pop them out of their molds and see how pretty they end up being for fun Christmas gifts around. They're perfect little add-ins to any kind of gift that you have. And as I said, you know, so easy to make that why wouldn't you? Why would you spend the $6 they are to buy at Lush when you just quickly throw one together for yourself? So I did buy these molds that I used today because in the new year, one of my personal challenges, what my New Year's resolution is going to be, I want to learn all about doing cold processed soap. And so I bought myself a book and I got myself a few supplies. So I'm getting ready to get started on that. And so if you're interested in learning to make stuff that's maybe a little bit more complicated than the bath bombs, make sure to subscribe because we'll have a series all about that. And if I have inspired you to go and try to make your very first bath bomb yourself, make sure to give me a thumbs up. It's nice to know that what we're creating is something that you guys are enjoying. So have a good day, have a good holidays, and we'll see you again.